How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Well, the Democrats have just voted to shut down the government again. This is their 10th vote to refuse to reopen the government. Very interesting. The Democrats have for a while been showing polling that shows people blame the Republicans, and I kind of understand that because every other shutdown has been caused by the GOP, and the Democrats have essentially messaged off of that. But as the Republicans have been more and more consistently saying, the Democrats, it seems more and more like people are starting to shift and realize it actually is the Democrats who are keeping the government shut down. And I think we're going to see as this drags out and the Republicans continue to vote to open the government and the Democrats continue to keep blocking the government from opening, that it's not going to go as well for the Democrats as they thought it would. We'll see how it plays out. I want to turn my attention to something else, though. And I mentioned this just a little bit earlier. There is a belief argued by some within this administration that capitalism is bad in the way the mineral issue and the rare earth mineral issue works, that the capitalists are going for cheap access to Chinese minerals. They're not investing in the United States. There actually is a subversive undercurrent of progressives on the right these days. This gets me into some of the stuff Matt Walsh has said in the last few days, that we should have no enemies to the right of us. We should not attack people on the right if we're on the right. And my view is that we should actually police our own side. The Democrats have gone off the cliff because they've refused to police their side. They've allowed the anti-Semitism to fester. There's a person on the right, he's a progressive of the right, who actually tweeted out that Hitler was actually good. We have the guy, the historian, the amateur historian platform by Tucker Carlson, who says Hitler was misunderstood and Winston Churchill was the bad guy. We shouldn't platform these people. We shouldn't have these people on the right. There are progressives on the right. What is a progressive? A progressive is someone who wants to wield the power of government to direct society in a particular way. The conservative position is that you should direct your own life as you see fit. The progressive position is that the government should direct society to steer you in a particular direction. The progressives of the left wish to steer society towards equity, and they wish to steer society towards diversity, and they wish to steer society towards inclusion, and they wish to steer society towards socialist economics. The progressives of the right want to steer society towards a two-parent nuclear household. They want to steer society towards cultural conservatism, but they also want to steer society towards a level of economic socialism and protectionism where the government has the industrial policy and the government sets the industrial policy and the government controls and picks winners and losers. The progressives of the left and the progressives of the right both want government to pick winners and losers. It's just the winners for the left are the losers for the right, and the winners for the right are the losers for the left. But there are progressives on the left and the right. They're not conservatives. The conservative position is that you know best for yourself and your family, and the government should get out of the way so that you can make decisions for you and your family. And the role of government is to ensure a level playing field. The progressives of the right and the progressives of the left wish to elevate portions of the economy and wish to elevate certain industrial players and wish to elevate certain enterprises unfairly to steer you towards them. My conservative position is that the government should level the playing field. And you pick the winners and losers. You do business with who you want to do business with. And typically for Americans, it's who gives you the cheapest price for the best product. The progressives on the left and the right say, no, government should involve themselves and steer the country. It is a progressive vision on the right that the government should steer you towards wholesome conservative values. I think wholesome conservative values are great. I think when the government gets involved, because the government is made up of what? Sinners. Those sinners will corrupt the process. I believe in arm's length transactions. Now, here's the problem, and let's play this out on the economic scale, is one of the things the government, including my friend Marco Rubio, has said in the past, that the way capitalist enterprises have gone towards other countries, particularly China, for rare earth minerals is a problem of capitalism chasing cheap. And that to the extent Marco has changed in his positions there, we need some sort of government industrial policy. The problem here is that when you have government industrial policy, the government industrial policy tends to be inefficient. The Chinese and the Soviets have used industrial policy. Socialist countries have government industrial policies, and the technocrats of government tend to make the bad decisions. The market, in all of the chaos, tends to actually make better decisions of where to allocate capital. And the mining of rare earth minerals in this country is a perfect example. Our government has made it very hard to extract rare earth minerals in this country. We are a land of plenty. We are a land of vast wealth and resources. And the government, on behalf of environmentalists, through both Democratic and Republican administrations, has made it very hard to extract the wealth and resources of our land for our benefit. The reason private sector businesses have gone to the Chinese and the Australians and the Canadians and the Peruvians is because those countries have made it very easy to extract minerals. In this country, it takes a decade to get a mine permit. A decade. At minimum, it takes 7 years. This is the permitting process in the United States. It takes you 4 to 5 years to discover where the minerals are. It then takes you 2 years of going through a discovery process of showing your findings, where the minerals are, what you want to extract. Then you have to do a feasibility study that takes 3 years in this country. From there, the permitting process. See, let me lay this out for you. And this is from a chart. And let me give you the source of the chart so that you understand where it comes from. It's the National Mining Association, which has been advocating for easier permitting in this country. And this is the chart they prepare, that from concept to discovery of the rare earth minerals, it can take you up to 7 years. You do all the research to figure out where are the rare earth minerals in the United States. How do we extract the minerals in the United States? That can take you 7, 8 years. Now you found the rare earth minerals. You want to get on the ground. You want to build a mine. You want to get the lithium. You want to get the gallium. You want to get the uranium. You want to get whatever the rare earth mineral is that you want. It's taking you 7 years to figure out where it is, how to buy the land, how to set up shop, how deep you have to go. It's taking you 7 years. Now you want the permit to extract them. In the United States of America, it takes a decade. So it's taking you 7 years to find the land, find the minerals, figure out how to extract the minerals, how many minerals there are to make it economically feasible for you to do it. That's taking you 7 years. Now it's going to take you a decade just to get the permit from the federal government to be able to extract it. In Canada, it takes 2 years. So in this country, the total process to extract a rare earth mineral is a minimum of 17 years. In Canada, it's 8. In Australia, it's 7. In Peru, it's 6. And the environmentalists say, but they don't have the environmental standards that we have. No, we're talking the permitting process here, environmentalists. You're doing a 3-card Monte you're trying to extract. Just to get your permit in the United States takes a decade. You can do the discovery and you can build your plan, your environmental containment plan to make sure there's not environmental catastrophe, extracting uranium, radioactive material from under the ground. You can do all of that. You can figure that out. It takes 10 years in this country to get the plan approved. Are you really saying the Canadians are less safe? Canada doesn't have the spillover environmental problems that you think, based on the logic, if it takes 2 years to get the permit in Canada, they would have massive and ecological damage. They don't. And so the companies that are getting the gallium and the uranium and the lithium and all the other precious minerals that we need to combat China, they're having to go to China or Australia or Peru or to Canada because we have them in this country under our ground, but it's going to take them 17 years to extract them in less than a decade in any of these other countries. And China has sped up the process because it's true. The Chinese, they don't care about the environmental fallout. They don't care about the ecological damage. The Chinese are perfectly happy to destroy their land mass to get the rare earth minerals, which means you get them out fast and you get them out cheap. And that's not what the mining associations are arguing in this country. In China, it can be 3 to 4 years as opposed to 7 to 10 years, but the 7 to 10 years is better than the 17 years. We just need permitting reform in this country for mines. And what the government, Republicans and Democrats alike, have accused the businesses, the mines, of being too capitalist and going too cheap and not being patriotic. And the problem is not patriotism. It's not capitalism. It's not the free market. The problem is, yet again, the government and the government leaders who blast the private companies for not being patriotic and for being too capitalist oriented and too profit motivated. It's not that they're motivated purely by the profit. It's that they can't even get the rare earth minerals out of this country. If we want to beat China, and we need to beat China, we've got to fix this. Stop blaming the private sector. Stop blaming the companies. Stop blaming the people who want to extract our resources. Blame the environmentalists and blame the government. It's the government and the environmentalists who are the ones who've caused pain in the process. We're struggling to get new oil drilling up in this country. Did you know that? Congress is working on expediting the process. The Senate has passed it. But we have a lot of leased land in this country by oil and gas companies. We could be extracting even more oil and gas. It's still at a price point that makes it advantageous for them to drill new wells. But our government makes it too expensive to put down new wells, even on land that's already been leased and approved. It is the product of the left working through the bureaucracy to make it more difficult. And the EPA under Lee Zeldin, thank goodness, is expediting the process, but Congress has to act as well. It is to our national security needs that Congress needs to make it easier for these companies to get our resources out of the ground. And our national security should come before a lot of the environmentalist concerns, but Congress has to act. It can't just be Lee Zeldin and the EPA, and it can't just be the president through executive order. Congress has got to act on this stuff. We are falling behind China on these issues, and we're falling behind not because of capitalist motivation, but because of congressional failure yet again. Let's go to the phones up in Connecticut. Patty's been waiting patiently. Welcome to the show, Patty. How are you?
Hi, Eric. Very good. Thank you so much for all you do. You do a great job. This is a great last segment you had, too. The gift of critical thinking and the gift of choice in this great country. I wanted to say, you tell me if you think this would be an example of toxic masculinity. The World War II, our veterans who fought heroically under George Patton, went through Europe, Normandy, Battle of the Bulge, won Bronze Stars, 2 Bronze Stars, Purple Heart, heroism above and beyond the call of duty. And these gentlemen who served in the freezing cold, very little food, who came home, were heroes to their family, thanked God every day for God, family, and country. Every day of their life to the last day of their life, they were grateful they had life, worked full-time jobs, part-time jobs for their children to be able to go to college, did every day of their life. And even as a patient who became a stroke victim, was so grateful, was so grateful he had the blessing of time. He had a wife, he had a family. He fought hard in his life. He worked hard, walked home in a blizzard when all the roads were closed, and he died the way he lived. He took nothing from the government. He died on his own dime. Is that an example of toxic masculinity? Or are those the pillars that made this country the greatest country in the world and are the greatest heroes of our lifetime?
Amen. Look, that's what they forget nowadays, and they say that's Antifa. That they have the audacity to compare the men who fought in World War II to the face-covered, flannel-wearing, smelly hippies who are attacking federal agents. Yeah, the values of the World War II generation today would be compared to toxic masculinity to the left. It's shameful. It is. It's why we got to push back against them and make gains in this country for the right. That's where Americans for Prosperity comes in. They're building an army of conservative activists to put points on the board for the right, to advance common sense conservative reforms. I was in Vermont last week. A week ago today, I was in Vermont. I was given a speech to Americans for Prosperity up there where their boots on the ground activists have helped the Republicans come within 2 seats of a majority in the state Senate. In fact, the lieutenant governor in Vermont is a Republican. Did you know that? He's the first lieutenant governor in Vermont to have beaten an incumbent since 1815. And the Republicans were helped by Americans for Prosperity, who around the country raise up an army of grassroots activists to advocate for common sense conservative reforms. The Democrats in Vermont are embracing conservative agenda items as they're scared to lose power. They're seeing what's happening up there. And it's because of the hard work of AFP that the Republicans are gaining common sense conservative reform. It's easy. It's wonderful. It helps. You go to AmericansForProsperity.com or sign up with AFPvolunteer.com. Go to AFPvolunteer.com, sign up with Americans for Prosperity, and become one of the army of activists who are advocating for common sense conservative reforms in the nation. I'm on their board of advisors. I would love to have you with us. AFPvolunteer.com. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. Delighted to have you with me. I want to return to the Supreme Court decision yesterday, Louisiana versus Calais. It is the redistricting decision and the Voting Rights Act case based on districts in Louisiana. And there is concern from Democrats that they could be wiped out in the South. Democrats hold 24 seats in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Tennessee combined. If the Voting Rights Act Section 2 is whittled down based on the proposal made by John Sauer, the Solicitor General for the Trump administration, Republicans could, in theory, gain 12 more seats in the South. In fact, Republicans could wipe out a majority-minority district in Tennessee. They could whittle down majority-minority districts in Florida and in North Carolina. In Georgia, they could wipe out the one majority-minority district in South Carolina. They could end it in Louisiana and Mississippi as well. And that's the Democrat nightmare scenario. I'm very familiar, however, with the history of how the Voting Rights Act helped Republicans, because I was starting to pay attention to politics in the 1990s in high school and in college. And it was the majority-minority districts that actually helped the GOP take over in the South. How so? Well, because of Supreme Court precedent, the Gingles or Jingles decision from 1986 that I talked about yesterday, Thornburg versus Gingles, that was a North Carolina case that went to the Supreme Court. And the court essentially said you've got to be able to draw districts in your states that reasonably represent minority voters. You can't dilute their voting strength. Meaning if you've got areas of the state that have high concentration of black voters, you can't carve them up into predominantly white districts to ensure that black members of Congress can't get elected. And so the way that case, Jingles, was interpreted was to draw districts that were very weirdly shaped, but to draw black voters into specific districts to ensure that black members of Congress could get elected. It has expanded over time in some cases to ensure Hispanic members can get elected, but mostly black members. And the way it had to work under this mandate from the Supreme Court in the Democratic South, where Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee were controlled at the time by Democrats. White Democrats controlled those states. It forced those states to the right because you had to lump enough Democrats together in districts that were majority black districts to ensure that the black Democrat could get elected. And that cut Republicans out of those districts. It made other districts more Republican. And what the white Democrats in the South reasoned at the time was that the independent voters would still be voting Democrat. And in 1994, there was a massive shift with Bill Clinton in the White House in Washington, and independent voters in the South and the Midwest who had historically voted Democrat decided, I don't like that guy. I'm voting Republican. And it caused this massive wave in 1994 of Republicans getting elected in the South. And the Republicans were able to get elected because the Democrats had drawn districts in those states to make them majority black districts. And in doing so, they had taken a lot of Democrats out of surrounding areas in the urban core of those states that ensured that the other districts became more and more Republican over time. And then the Republicans started getting elected at the federal level in the 1990s. And then by the 2000s, it started happening at the state level. And then by 2010 was happening at the local level. Areas of the country were starting to vote Republican at the federal level. Remember, some of these states had voted for Ronald Reagan against Jimmy Carter and then definitely against Walter Mondale. They were comfortable first voting Republican for president. Then they became comfortable voting Republican for the Senate. Then they became comfortable voting Republican for the House. Then they became comfortable voting Republican for governor. Then they became comfortable voting Republican for the state legislature. The state legislature was at the bottom. And it took a long time from Ronald Reagan in 1980. And then you started getting the accidental senators in the South, Republican senators who they didn't think would get elected in Georgia and in Florida and elsewhere. And then they started regularly electing Republican senators and then Republican congressmen and ultimately Republican state legislatures in the South. And they did it because of the majority black districts where the Democrats had to be lumped together to preserve the voting strength of black voters in the South. And that helped Republicans get elected. Ironically, now you fast forward to the year 2025. In 1994, those majority black districts helped the Republicans take over Congress by pulling Democrats into districts where they otherwise would not have been, in weirdly shaped districts that stretched across states to ensure black representation in Congress. It helped the GOP. And now, ironically, because of the shift of voters in the South and the Midwest over time, the majority black districts helped the Democrats. It hurt the Democrats in the 90s. In 2025, it helps the Democrats to have those districts because otherwise those states have become so Republican over time. If you diluted the black voting strength now, the districts would be Republican for a time. And that's the thing the Republicans don't realize here. Some of these districts are extremely Republican right now in the South. But they could be diluted in such a way that if the mood shifts dramatically against the Republicans, you could very much have a dramatic shift back to the Democrats. You could swing the other way. I'm thinking of my buddy Rich McCormick. He's in the 7th Congressional District in Georgia. The 7th Congressional District in Georgia, it was redrawn. After the 2020, the GOP shook things up again, and that district is a pretty solidly Republican district. Rich McCormick won it with 65% of the vote, I think. That district had been a Lucy McBath district where she won at 61%. It was redrawn, I think. I'm pulling up the most recent one here, 2020. Yeah, it was redrawn 2022. It was 60% Democrat. In 2024, it was 65% Republican. That district, you could bring down Rich McCormick's vote total to eliminate some of the 6th Congressional District, which is a Democratic district now in Georgia. You could make it a slightly less Republican district that Rich would still get elected in, and you could actually make this majority-minority district that's south of it actually competitive for the GOP for now. The problem for Republicans that are cheering on the end of the Voting Rights Act and the ability to get rid of these majority black districts is this. There's no such thing as politics or permanence in politics in America. There's simply no such thing as permanent majority politics in the United States. This is from Nate Cohen at the New York Times. Republicans have been redrawing congressional districts this year, but so far it hasn't seemed enough to deny Democrats a reasonable path to control the House of Representatives. That might change if the Supreme Court strikes down Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act in Louisiana versus Calais. Without Section 2, which has been interpreted to require the creation of majority-minority districts, Republicans could eliminate upwards of a dozen Democratic-held districts across the South. Republicans may not eliminate every Democratic-leaning district that they technically could, but the party's aggressive mid-cycle redistricting suggests they would eliminate enough to obtain a significant structural advantage. It's not clear whether this would occur by next year's midterm elections, with a court ruling likely next summer, but the new seats would eventually be enough to make Republicans favored to win the House even if they lose the popular vote by a wide margin. With those new seats added to the ones Republicans already seem poised to gain, the House would not be competitive in most election years. Remember, this is what the Democrats have done in New England. This is what the Democrats have done in Illinois. This is what the Democrats have done in California, where their nonpartisan drawing is actually stacked full of progressive Democrats. Despite all the gerrymandering by both political parties in recent years, neither has been able to obtain a significant structural advantage in the House this decade. In two very close elections, the party that won the most votes won the most seats. That's partly because each side's gerrymanders canceled out the others, but it's also because the two major legal limitations on gerrymandering have canceled each other out: state redistricting laws and Section 2. While state laws redistricting gerrymandering have mostly been enacted by Democrats in blue and purple states, Section 2 is the main legal limitation to gerrymandering in many red states in the South. It bans voting practices that discriminate based on race, which has been interpreted to require the creation of majority-minority districts in areas with racially polarized voting and where minority groups represent a majority of the population. Without Section 2, many state legislatures would be free to eliminate majority-minority congressional districts, which mostly vote Democrat. It's hard to say exactly how many districts Republicans would eliminate. It's also hard to say whether Republicans would be able to eliminate those districts before next year's midterms. The Supreme Court probably isn't going to come out with a decision until after the primaries. But even on the lower end of the estimate, Republicans will probably eliminate around a half dozen districts. The majority black districts and otherwise overwhelmingly Republican states and regions of the Deep South. One limiting factor, however, is that you could endanger Republican incumbents. And Nate gets to the point that I've been making. This is true in relatively competitive states like Georgia or Texas, where Republicans have to preserve some number of Democratic districts to ensure that every Republican incumbent represents a safe district. It's true in Florida, where Republicans have the additional burden of needing to plausibly follow the state's not strongly enforced Fair Districts Amendment. A second limiting factor is the cooperation of Republican members of Congress or even state legislatures. It's not always painless for Republicans to eliminate enough additional Democratic seats, and Republican officials may not support more aggressive gerrymandering, even if it's mathematically possible. There is this balance of the state interest, and it's the state legislature that does it, not Congress. And you got to have the state legislature go along with it. And here's the dirty little secret. Some of these Republicans prefer some of the Democrats to the Republicans. It's true. You know, I could see in Georgia, for example, Republicans propping up a Democratic member of Congress just to hurt Marjorie Taylor Greene. They could prop up Lucy McBath. Preserve her Democratic district, cause problems for Marjorie. Republicans have to be careful with this as well, because demography is not destiny. Black and Hispanic voters have moved to the right, but they could move to the left. White voters have been moving to the left. It's a complicated process, and it's a gamble. I'm reminded of my state, where in the early 2000s, the writing was on the wall. The state of Georgia was shifting to the Republican Party, and the Democrats in the state of Georgia played it too clever by half with their redistricting. They got tossed out by federal courts and had to redistrict again, and they did their best to make the districts as Democratic as possible. You know what happened on Election Day? Many of those districts drawn to be Democrat had the voters of those districts who were Democrats show up and vote Republican, and it handed the Republicans control of the Georgia State Senate. And then in the State House, a number of Democrats decided, you know what, turns out I'm a Republican, and flipped to the GOP. Sonny Perdue got elected governor in the state of Georgia, the first Republican since Reconstruction. He did it in 2002. The state of Georgia began to flip and flip and flip and flip. And the state became Republican. And now here in 2025, Republicans in Georgia are worried it could shift back to the Democrats. It's become more of a swing state. The suburban voters in Texas have become more swingy. In fact, the irony is in Texas, it's the recent migrants from California who are more conservative than the longtime Texans. The Republicans have got to be careful with the games they play with redistricting, because it can come back to bite them. Right now, it absolutely would help the Republicans to wipe out some of these majority-minority districts. But the reality is, long-term, it actually probably hurts the Republicans to have the Voting Rights Act go away. Right now, they can hide behind the Voting Rights Act to carve Democratic seats and protect themselves from the wrath of Republican voters who want them to maximize Republican gains. But in maximizing the Republican gains without the Voting Rights Act, the Republicans risk actually helping the Democrats long-term take back power in southern states. Working on something right now. The markets are tanking. There are some growing concerns about regional bank loans and the stability of the regional banking market in the country. I'll have that in the Four Things to Know podcast. Right now, I want to take James's phone call. Welcome to the show, James. How are you?
Good. I was just wondering why we never talk about Connecticut. I know you're kind of a southern station, but Connecticut is Democratic all the way through, right from congressmen, senators, governors, mayors. Mm-hmm. That state is so blue, it's bluer than navy blue. I don't think they have I know one time they had 5 districts, and out of the 5, 1 was Republican. I lost count now. I don't know if they're all Democratic now and no Republican.
Yeah, and so James, I did mention Connecticut the other day and used it to highlight the problem that it wasn't just the southern states, although it is a bigger issue in southern states because of the Voting Rights Act that doesn't apply to Connecticut. It applies to the South. But in Connecticut, there actually used to be a congressional district that was Republican. In the year 2000, the Democratic legislature in Connecticut redistricted in a way to eliminate that district. And there actually is enough of a Republican core in the state of Connecticut that they could draw a district reasonably compact that did actually provide Republicans with a district in Connecticut. And it's the Democratic legislature in Connecticut has flat out refused to shake up its congressional district because they don't want to give the Republicans one. Connecticut is actually more gerrymandered than Georgia is, where I am, because in Georgia we're bound by the Voting Rights Act and Connecticut isn't. So the Democrats there have gone hog wild to make sure Republicans can't get elected to Congress, even though they could draw more reasonable districts that would get a Republican elected.
Yeah, when they went from 6 districts to 5, District 5 was kind of a mix between Democratic and Republican, and it had a ton of independents. And which way the independents went, that's where you either got a Democratic congressman or Republican. I know for a while there they had a Republican in District 5, but not anymore.
Yeah, and so for those of you who aren't in Connecticut, if you were to look at this district, it's District 5 is very oddly shaped. It's got almost like a mouth, an upper lip and a lower lip that wrap around Bristol County there and go over towards Hartford from the west side of the state. And they could make that a more compact district, but it would be Republican, and the legislature refuses to. Now, I got to tell you about the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. Before I get out of here, you can get 3 of them. Save $200. Get them for less than $200 at EdenPureDeals.com. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK3. What you do is you go to EdenPureDeals.com, you put in ERIC3 in the discount code box, you get 3 of these. They're an air purifier, and they're an odor eliminator. They work so well as an odor eliminator. I keep one in my travel bag. They're small. You can keep it in your hand. You get 3 upstairs, downstairs, your basement, your RV, your travel bag, wherever you need them. They get rid of 99.9% of bacteria and viruses. They eliminate odors. They trap dust, pollen, pet dander, you name it. What you do is you go to EdenPureDeals.com, put in the discount code ERIC3, and you will get 3 of them. You will get them for less than $200. You'll get them saving $200. You'll begin to eliminate odors, plug it into the wall, whatever you need. EdenPureDeals.com.